The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you. Let the celebration begin.
Well, so much for a quiet Friday. Howie Roseman will not let us have a free weekend here. Some big news on the Eagle Eye podcast with Ruben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. Ruben, first, let's just go through this trade. The Eagles were sitting at pick number 6. They trade back to number 12. In addition, they pick up pick 123. That's the 4th rounder. The Dolphins get number 6 and number 156. The big reason for this trade is the Eagles pick up a 2022 first-round pick, which means they could end up with 3 first-rounders next year.
Yeah, and it's a trade for the future, which is really what this year's all about. It's all about the future, and I understand the frustration fans have about, I wanted Kyle Pitts, I wanted this guy at 6, that guy at 6. I get that, and I feel a part of that too. But the return is pretty good. You're still going to get a really good player at 12, and there's no guarantee we're going to get Kyle Pitts at 6 anyway, or whoever it was you had earmarked. They're going to get a really good player. If there's 4 QBs that go before him, they're going to get the 8th best non-QB in the draft, or what they perceive as, on top of a first-round pick next year. It's all about building a team, and it's all about the long view, and that's what Howie's taking. And I think the argument is, if Jalen Hurts, obviously this move tells you that Jalen Hurts is their guy, because
For this year,
because you get out of 6 to go to 12, you're not going to have. And I'll tell you what, the way things look, they might not have been able to get. They probably wouldn't have been able to get a quarterback at 6 anyway. At least they weren't going to get Trey Lance. It certainly looks like it. And to follow up on the actual trade, just a few minutes before the trade, the Dolphins got out of 3, traded to 12 with the Niners. So Niners sent 12 to the Dolphins. Niners are at 3. Dolphins get also next year and the year after first-round picks from the Niners.
Oh, an important thing to note, the 2022 first-rounder that the Eagles get is the Dolphins pick.
Okay.
So you watch Miami this year. You're going to have a reason to watch Miami and the Colts this year, because that determines where the Eagles pick. I mean, there's a real good chance they're going to have – look, I think the Dolphins are going to be a pretty good team, but 3 first-round picks is pretty good.
Yeah, and if that happens, I mean, there could be more with Howie. Who knows? I mean, there could be more in store, certainly. But I think when you look at the long view, it's a good trade. It's going to come down to what's the difference in talent between who you get at 12 and who you would have gotten at 6. And, you have a chance. Certainly there's going to be a really good corner there. There's no guarantee that, a guy like Jalen Waddle won't be there at 12. Devonta Smith might be there at 12. Certainly Caleb Farley, Surtain could be there. J.C. Horn might be gone. I think he's kind of elevated himself to the top of that list for now, but who knows? You can get a really good player at 12, and then you have a 1. I can see, if I was a GM, I wouldn't do that. I want the best player. I just want that best player. But, Howie's job is to think with the long view in mind, and they don't have any young players. They don't have any good young players, and the chance of getting 2 in the next 2 years instead of 1, or at least 2 first-round picks instead of 1 is, we talked about this the other day. When you look at value, it does make sense.
And that's the way Howie looks at the draft. And it kind of tells you where the roster is. There's just such a lack of young talent that he feels the need to say, hey, we want a bunch of good players. It's almost, I guess he looks at it like it's almost a luxury to try to draft an elite player. I wouldn't move out either. I look at it like, especially with this pretty obvious run on quarterbacks, obviously, once the 49ers move up to 3, they're taking a quarterback. So you're going to have 3 quarterbacks in the first 3 picks. There's a chance one goes to 4.
I think the Falcons are going to get out of 4. Because I think once you have a run on QBs, like we're already seeing, the other teams that want QBs, like, the Panthers, they're going to be like, well, we got to move up too, because we're going to lose You know,
Yeah, I mean, if there's a bidding war, otherwise you can wait. If you're going to get we think there's 4 quarterbacks, right, at the top. You just wait and get that guy.
well, if you're
But
Denver, if you're Denver, you might say, I got to, you know,
yeah,
so because I don't think the Falcons are going to draft a quarterback. So I think
but that's more of a reason for the Eagles to stay at 6 because you're going to get
the best,
the second best non-quarterback in the draft.
right?
Second best player. If that's so, even if look, I'm looking at Cincinnati, and I think Sewell makes sense because they got to keep Burrow upright. But even if Burrow like lobbies for Jamar Chase, give me back my receiver, and they do that, sure, then you have Sewell or Pitts right there for you. And maybe the Eagles looked at it and said they don't think they obviously did. The difference in caliber player wasn't enough to turn down a first round pick, and I get that. It kind of hurts though, and I get why Eagles fans are a little disappointed right now because we spent the last 3 weeks talking about they could get this generational receiver in Jamar Chase. Like he was the better receiver on the team that had Justin Jefferson, who went on to have an incredible rookie year. So you're looking at Jamar Chase like that guy is going to be a star in the league. And then Kyle Pitts, how much he's been talked up in the last couple of weeks. Daniel Jeremiah, who I respect as much as anyone in the draft world, says he might be the best player in the draft. You have a chance to get the best player in the draft at 6, and now you don't have either. That's tough to swallow, even knowing you're getting a first-round pick back in return.
Yeah, I would agree with everything you just said. And I would agree with the notion that Howie in the front office thinks that the player that they're going to get at 12 isn't that much worse than the player they're going to get at 6. And we won't know the answer to that for a couple of years. If they get Jalen, Waddle at 12, and he ends up having a stellar career, then and then you get somebody next year with that pick you got in the first round. It was a good trade. My thing is this team needs elite players. They need, and those are the guys you get at 6, and you don't always get them at 12. You can, and teams have, but if you really want elite players, you get them in the top handful of picks. And 6 is I mean, they just don't have the, we've talked about this. I mean, they pick at number 6 so rarely. I mean, it was Carson was 2. Corey Simon was a top 10 pick, and Donovan. I mean, it's so few and far between. It's like one guy since Corey Simon
And Lane
Johnson was 4. My bad. But still though, I mean, it's 2 guys in the last 2 decades. It's rare.
And they had to trade up to get Carson. It wasn't like they were there naturally.
Right. Maybe Howie just feels like we're going to suck for the next few years, so we're going to have top 10 picks. But that's not encouraging either. But I just think this team has had so few really elite players over the last stretch. That's what they need. And the ones they've had really haven't sustained it. They've been elite, but we're talking about like multiple Pro Bowl type guys, Fletcher, Kelsey, those type of guys, and that's what they need. Or Ertz, and these guys are all 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. That's what they need, and I'm not sure your chances of getting that at 12 are, close to what they are at 6.
Yeah, it's fair. So there was a report from NFL Network that the Eagles tried to trade up to 3, but they were only willing to do that if they could land Zach Wilson. Since then, Ian Rappaport, who reported it, kind of walked it back and made it a little less definitive and said the Eagles liked Wilson. They were interested in him, but thought it was better for their team to trade out and get a first-round pick. So make of all that what you will, but the fact that they were even thinking about Zach Wilson kind of tells you, and the fact that they sent Shane Steichen and Brian Johnson to his pro day today on Friday, it tells you that, yeah, for right now, Jalen Hurts is the guy, but it's yet to be seen if he's the long-term solution. They wouldn't be looking at Wilson if they thought, no doubt about it, Jalen Hurts is the guy, and he's going to have to prove that this year, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a year, and I think that's today told us two things about Jalen Hurts. Number one, he's definitely the guy for this year. And number two, he's not definitely the guy beyond this year.
Yeah.
Because if you had any intention of drafting a quarterback, you certainly don't go from 6 to 12, because that's no man's land for quarterbacks. I mean, there's not going to be anybody, at 12 that makes sense to draft as a QB. Then again, it wouldn't make sense to draft on a 53 either, but that's another story. But it tells you that, that Jalen Hurts is going to be the guy this year, but he's on the clock. And certainly if he had a Kyle Pitts to throw to 80 times this coming year, he would have had a better chance to succeed.
How do you think Jalen Hurts is feeling right now? Not that he cares. He's got ice in his veins. But on one hand, he basically gets assured that he's the quarterback this year. On the other, they just traded back and they missed an opportunity to get one of the top weapons. And there are reports that the Eagles were interested in possibly moving up to draft his replacement. Probably mixed feelings from the Hurts camp today.
I would think so. I would think he might be having his agent call the Colts right about now. So you need a backup out there. But I mean, the Eagles have to do that. I mean, this is all the position that they put themselves in by drafting him. And it was also avoidable. Maybe he'll be a star and it'll, prove fortuitous, but I think Jalen's he's probably texting Carson saying, I kind of see what, you mean. Because I mean, I don't know. And that's probably not fair to Jalen, because in the limited time that we've seen him and talked to him, he doesn't think that way. He thinks, you put me out there with Quez Watkins and Khalil Tate, and I'm gonna go win a football game. I think he's that confident in himself. But and I'm sure he's a smart enough guy to know that this is a really good QB class, and the Eagles had the 6th pick, and they would, any team's going to do their due diligence unless you have, Drew Brees, young Drew Brees or Aaron Rodgers, elite Hall of Fame type guy who's 26 to 28. Other than that, you got to understand this. Sam Darnold was the 5th pick, 3rd pick, a couple years, 17 in 18,
yeah.
18, 3 years, and they're already moving on from him. So it's quarterbacks don't have a chance to develop like they used to. Guys would, well, he's in his 3rd, 4th year now. We need to see something. I mean, that doesn't happen anymore. So, but it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see. I don't know when we'll talk to him, but I'm sure he'll say the right things. But I'd love to know, a fly on the wall, what he's thinking right now.
Yeah. So on the last podcast, we talked about this, and now I think there's an even greater chance of it. The Eagles getting back into the first round is, I think, a much bigger possibility right now than it was a few days ago, because right now they have the 37th pick. They have 2 in the 3rd round, 70 and 84, and now they have a 4th round pick. So they had the ammo to get up from 37 back into the first round. So draft nights, I'm not going to rest easy until that first round is over. Because after they pick at 12, they have everything at their disposal if they want to get back in that first round.
And I pretty much expect them to, because why wouldn't you? Unless you feel like, the value is the same at, 25 as it is at 37, which isn't the case. I mean, there's usually quite a drop off there when you get into the 2nd round. Not exactly, but why wouldn't you? They have the ammo, and that's how Howie sees these picks. I mean, they're assets. They're not players. They're not draft picks. They're assets, and you use them to get other assets that might be worth a little bit more, and you just keep doing that and keep doing that, and eventually you have to draft, and that's the problem. Getting all the picks is great. But eventually you have to get some good players with them. But yeah, I would be surprised if they stay at 37, because why would you? Because you don't need 11. You don't need to draft 11 players.
Yeah.
So
I agree. So if you can dump a 3rd round pick and move up back in there, what is it? Do a 3rd and a 6th. Go take a 6th round pick too for your troubles and get back up in there. I would think about it. Normally in the draft, there's a cutoff. And the Eagles don't really use a traditional round grading system, but the teams that do, it depends on year, but most teams will be like there's 26 first round picks
right
this year. So you got to get to make it worth you got to get to that level. And I don't know about the overall depth of this class. And this might be a tough year to figure that out anyway, because of all the variables, combine and a lot of opt-outs.
Yeah.
But the Eagles will play that game. I mean, they'll figure out where the value point is and where there's a drop off, and they'll try to get up before the drop off. That's the way they look at these things. And that's the way they should look at it. Overall though, like when getting back to the 6th pick, I don't love it.
Well, here's the thing. They could potentially have 5 first-round picks. Say they move up from 37 to 25. Then they have their own first-round pick next year, most likely the Colts' first-round pick and a Dolphins' first-round pick. So if you have 4 other first-round picks, why not take that elite all-time generational player at 6? And, I mean, they wouldn't have the Dolphins' other one if they still had 6, but they could have another one this year and then 2 if they hadn't made the trade. They could still have 4 first-round picks in a 2-year period, one of them being at number 6. So you can still build and build and build with these other picks, and also get that guy at 6 that could really change your franchise.
Yeah, and the Dolphins are a team coming up right now. I mean that pick next year, who knows? But I think you could end up with that Dolphins pick and that Colts pick in the 20s.
Sure. I would expect that, really. Yeah. I mean, I think they're both kind of 10-6 type teams. So I don't know when we'll talk to Howie. We usually talk to him
Pre-draft.
Yeah. Sorry?
Like a week before the draft normally.
Yeah. But I'd love to hear what he was thinking. I wonder if there's more in store. It's amazing. I mean, the Dolphins trade, I was like, I'm writing my story. It was like how this impacts the Eagles. And 5 minutes later, I'm like this story just got really different.
Yeah, much different. It's interesting. And with Howie, you're right. There's this feeling that like, are we done? I don't know if we're done. I think there's always a plan. And I always think back to 2016 when he fed us that BS line about how much better the 8 spot was than 13 when he made that trade. But It was all with the goal in mind to move up again. So, I mean, there's a good chance this is just a smaller piece of a larger plan from Howie, and that wouldn't surprise anyone. In a way, it kind of feels like that.
It kind of does. Maybe they'll end up back at 6, but with an extra pick. That'd be funny. All right, Eagles fans, it's time to look forward to the dream vacation, the Philadelphia Eagles fan cruise. Tickets are selling out fast, and the ship sails a year from now, March of 2022. 7 days and 7 nights with Eagles fans and only Eagles fans. Book your tickets now at PhiladelphiaEaglesCruise.com.
All right, Rube. So I've put together a quick list. It's so funny because we spent the last 3-4 weeks talking about Kyle Pitts or Jamar Chase. And look, I guess there's a chance one of those guys could slip to 12. Anything can happen, but I think it's probably unlikely. All right. I mean, best receiver in the draft, maybe best player in the draft, they're probably gone by 12. So the whole thing now shifts focus to new players who the Eagles might be in line for. So I put together a quick list of 10 of them, and it's not a completely comprehensive list. We'll see what happens at these pro days if guys start rising or falling, but let's just go through them and you tell me if you think it makes sense or not. The first one is Devontae Smith, and I know some people think he'll be long gone. Maybe, but I think there is a concern about his size. He's 170, and that might not bother some teams, but it might bother others. Heisman Trophy winner, certainly productive, played in the SEC against really good corners. But if he's there at 12, I mean, that's a pretty nice pick. Yeah,
and I keep coming back to how he doesn't just make a move like this hoping that someone they like is at 12. He makes a move like this with a player in mind or a smaller, like on his board, either Smith or Waddle or whoever it is, one of these guys is going to be there at 12. And
they have like a comparable grade. So if they can move back 6 spots in this case, and they say one of these 3 players with a really comparable grade is going to be there, then they do it.
Right. And certainly he, we talked about him a little the other day. I'm a little skittish at the size, but not really that much. And certainly Deshaun showed what you can do at 160 pounds. If he could have the career Deshaun had.
Yeah. Even Hollywood Brown a few years ago.
Yeah.
A couple years ago.
They were both 2s, probably because of their size. But certainly, I don't think anybody would be surprised if he
wasn't Hollywood a 1.
Was he a 1? Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
he was 25.
Yeah. But I wouldn't be surprised if he drops to 12. I mean, you know how it is. It's like once people start thinking, oh, he's not big enough, that's when guys start dropping. So that's kind of out there, and certainly could be there at 12.
Yeah. The next one is Jalen Waddle, his teammate at Alabama. It's funny, he's injured, which would fit right in here, but it was an ankle injury. As long as he's healed up, he's another guy. He's played inside, he's played outside. He's a good receiver, has familiarity with Jalen Hurts. And not that Jalen Hurts is the long-term guy, but would help this year.
He could be. We don't know.
Yeah.
And he's kind of some people like him, think he's the best receiver in the class. I wouldn't be surprised if the Eagles feel that way. I wouldn't be surprised if they're targeting him. I mean, if they feel
it wouldn't surprise you if the Eagles went against the grain and picked a receiver that not everyone thought was a consensus pick at that spot?
Well, it's not like people think he's going to go in the 3rd round or anything. I mean, he's not J-Jaw. I mean, I think he's really, really good. But we'll see. I think he's certainly in the mix at 12.
Yeah. Then a few cornerbacks. I think there's really 3. And to me, these are the top 3 corners in this draft. J.C. Horn from South Carolina, Caleb Farley from Virginia Tech, and Patrick Surtain from Alabama. Any 3 of those guys, like any one of those 3, I think would be a decent pick there.
Yeah, and certainly would fill a need. It's a good spot for those. We talked about this, I guess it was yesterday on the last podcast. I think all 3 of those corners are going to go between 10 and 20. So now you're sitting at 12. Horn had the great pro day. Was it Wednesday, I guess? Yesterday? I don't even know. But a lot of people think he's the first corner off the board now. Gosh, if you can get J.C. Horn at 12 and a first-round pick for 6, then that's a great trade, I think.
I don't know. I'm still skeptical about it because I think the level at 6 would be considerably higher. But maybe the Eagles don't feel that way. Caleb Farley is an interesting one. One of the opt-outs. So it's like we haven't seen him in a while, and he's hurt. So he's not even – I don't know if he'll be able to work out before the draft. I don't think he's doing – I think their pro day is actually on Friday today.
Yeah,
he's working out.
He's not working out at the pro day. He's hoping to have his own pro day at some point.
Yeah, it'd be tight before the draft. But he's a really good player. I mean, I'm curious to see how these NFL teams deal with the opt-out guys because he was so good just a year ago.
Out of sight, out of mind. You know how the NFL is, man. They forget about you. If it'll be interesting because, I mean, there was a point a few months ago where Farley was considered the best of the bunch. And
I'm not sure he's not.
I'm not either. Yeah. I mean, we do this. I mean, you look at the way they all played in 2019, and you're gonna take all that away just because J.C. Horn ran a 4.39. That's what people do. But
at a pro day, by the way, all these numbers are goofy numbers.
That's right. Well, I don't know. Your boy had him on 3 clocks at 4.39. James.
They're all goofy numbers.
They are.
I can't trust any of them. Like we're all putting them next to the combine numbers.
Right.
I don't know. And maybe they don't like, I think the GPS tracking means more now and it should like game speed, but to put up a 40 from a pro day against the combine numbers.
I agree.
Hand times are faster.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I know that being a 35-year track guy. So
yeah, they're just faster. So the next 2 guys on the list, offensive tackles, Rashawn Slater and Christian Darrisaw from Northwestern and Virginia Tech, respectively. It wouldn't surprise any of us if the Eagles take a lineman. offensive or defensive. It just wouldn't surprise us because that's the way they build. And I think, the value at offensive line at this spot at 12 is probably a little higher than the defensive lineman we're going to mention in a second. But specifically Slater, if he's there at 12, there's a chance he could be the best player on the board.
Yeah, that's true. I think, and Howie will tell you they don't draft for need, but I think what they do at 12 will tell you what they think about Jordan Mailata and Andre Dillard. I mean, can you take an offensive tackle in the first round twice in 3 years?
But can you pass up on the best player available because you have this freakish guy who you've seen for what, like 6 games? And like his literal first 6 games of football?
Yeah. I know.
I don't know. That's a tough spot.
I don't know what they think of Mailata. I mean, if I'm Jeff Stoutland and Howie Roseman, Nick Sirianni, I'm looking at this kid thinking he's never played before, and he played really well.
Yeah.
He's got a ceiling, man.
Oh, yeah.
So
he might not have a ceiling, actually.
he might have busted the ceiling because he's so tall. But I think we'll learn a lot about that by whether because I mean, like you said, these are guys that, and Darrisaw as well, Virginia Tech kid, that make a lot of sense at 12. If they don't, then you got to think they feel like A, Lane is going to be healthy, and B, Mailata is the guy, and C, they have something functional in Dillard. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, they're all 3 of those guys are question marks in different ways.
Yeah, no, you're right. Next 2 guys, defensive ends, Greg Rousseau from Miami. Gregory Rousseau, sorry. He's listed as Gregory everywhere. Miami, and Kwity Paye from Michigan. I'm not sure if the value is right. I'm not Rousseau's a tough one because he really just has 1 year in college. He opted out, but I mean, 2019 he was fantastic. Huh?
17 sacks or something.
He had 15 and a half sacks, 19 and a half TFLs. So yeah, he was great in 2019, but it was really his only college season.
Well, Trey Lance only had 1 season.
It's true, but it's also the reason why he's probably the rawest of the bunch.
Yeah. 6'7", 265.
He's a monster.
Yeah. Interesting guy.
And Paye is, he might end up being the first edge player off the board. It's not like a super top heavy group of edge rushers. And there are some of these guys who I wouldn't necessarily trust in a 4-3. Like there are some of them who are clearly 3-4 outside backers. I think both these guys can play in a 4-3. So, and Rousseau's big enough, he can slide inside at times. Yeah, probably could. I wonder how much. I mean, Howie has to know that everybody in this city wants them to take a weapon for Hurts, and failing that, then a cornerback. Howie wants so desperately to be liked. I wonder if he thinks, I'm going to give the people what they want. I think he's going to do whatever he can to save his job, and that's just take the best player he can. And that might bring us to the last one. It's not going to happen, but I'm putting Micah Parsons on the list because he might be the best player when they pick a 12. And it's an organizational thing, the disrespect for linebackers. It just is. I know they drafted one in the 3rd round last year. It was a late 3rd round pick, and they really drafted traits and not a player with Davion Taylor. But I wonder what Jonathan Gannon's influence will be. Because you look at the Vikings, and that's a team that's put considerable resources into the linebacker position. They got decimated by injuries last year, but they put considerable resources there. And then in Indianapolis, if there's any team in the league who knows how important a great linebacker can be, I mean, with Darius Leonard there, I mean, they know it. So it's fascinating to me, what wins there and how much of the organizational philosophy about linebacker was the organizational philosophy, and how much was it molded by what Jim Schwartz emphasized? And will that change at all?
Yeah, those are great questions. That would be a good story actually to write, because Micah Parsons makes sense in so many ways. And, a lot of people would probably mock him at 12 to the Eagles if it wasn't for the fact that they haven't taken a linebacker in the first round in 40 years.
Someone call up Jerry Robinson. He's probably getting tired of hearing his phone ring.
1979.
He sees a call come from Philly. He's like, "Oh, which linebacker might go in the first round this year?"
215. Nah. Yeah, I remember calling Mike Mamula once and asking him about the combine. It was like 10 years after his combine. And he said every year at the combine, and I mean, I knew him, I had a relationship with him. So he gave me an interview. But he said, yeah, every year around the combine, like 3 or 4 writers call me, like, because like they think I sucked. Like, they think I'm like a workout warrior. And he's like, yeah, tell him, well, I had 31 and a half sacks in 5 years, so just make sure you mention that. But yeah, 42 years since they drafted a linebacker in the first round. And this is the one year that I think it kind of makes sense. And and it's a great point, because organizationally only means the GM and the coaches. So if, like you said, the head coach and the D coordinator are both guys that have a different kind of, they value linebackers differently than the general manager, I could see there being some discussion about, hey, this guy makes sense for us. Let's go get him. I think it's not, like most years, I feel like it's out of the question, but man, imagine Micah Parsons in an Eagles uniform.
You mentioned the fans would be happy with the weapon. How happy would fans be if they drafted a linebacker?
Yeah, Penn State kid. And he's, I think he's going to be a hell of a player. Had a great pro day.
Yeah, the numbers he put up were incredible. But he has the tape to back it too. It's not like he's just putting up these numbers out of nowhere.
Sure.
I mean,
yeah.
When he played, he looked like it. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because like all I have to do is watch Colts from the last few years and see Darius Leonard out there, and yeah, look at this guy.
Well, I just might mock Micah Parsons to the Eagles.
I just sway you. Whenever everyone calls you an idiot, just be like,
I've swayed myself. I really think it's not out of the question. I really do.
That'd be fascinating. I don't know. We'll see what happens. It's going to be. It's just weird too that we have these 2 big trades in the same day, a month away from the draft.
That's a weird thing. I mean, usually you get these on draft day or the day before.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that tells me maybe there's more to come.
Yeah. It seems strange, right?
Yeah.
That maybe the Dolphins, like, it was contingent on them getting like trading back up, and that's why this happened. Like the Dolphins didn't want to do half of their moves and be sitting out there exposed, basically. And then the Eagles could pull out, and they're stuck at 12.
Right. That could be. Yeah, I don't know. I thought what did you think of Tua last year? I mean, I thought, I know there are people thinking they were going to, I know he didn't set the world on fire, but he wasn't bad. And it was kind of a weird deal with Fitz and everything. But
yeah, it wasn't awful. I mean, I wouldn't give up on him after a year.
No, certainly. And, I think the hip is probably a bigger question than the ability. But he seemed to be healthy. I don't know. The whole thing is fascinating to me, but I'm going back and forth. I still would have rather stayed at 6, but I think there's ways that this, if they play it right, there's ways that this can be a really good trade for him.
Yeah, and like even though I would have stayed at 6, I understand how he's doing. Like I can see why, and it's not like I'm like 90-10. I'm probably more like 60-40.
Yeah.
So I see it, and having 3 first-rounders next year not only could potentially give you 3 good players, it gives you a lot of options. And how he loves options. He's you're right. He looks at these things as assets as he picks his assets, and he loves to have that flexibility that if, say, the draft starts next year and they want a quarterback or they want player X, they have the ability to go up and get him. And they also have that flexibility this year, like we were mentioning, to get back in the first round or be able to kind of bounce back and forth from, in the middle rounds too. Like they can move up and get a guy they want if he's sitting there.
What if the Colts do something like take Carson out, like on running plays to keep his percentage down? Like, because who cares who's handing the ball off? I guess the other team would know it's a running play. What if you take him out? Like anytime you're up like 17, let's just take Carson out and try to keep that number under, 74 or 69%. I guess that'd be hard.
I don't think Frank is going to think like that.
No, Frank and I definitely don't think alike. He's a very smart guy.
Yeah. But I mean, heck, it could be, Carson could get injured, and it's very possible. So
I still think it's more likely a 1 than not a 1.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah. So, and here's the thing: even if this trade, if they missed out on a guy at 6, as long as they hit on the guy at 12 and then hit on the guy, next year in the first round that they get, it could still be a successful trade, even if they, we could look back and say, well, they could have had this guy, but at least they got these 2 guys. So it doesn't mean, it's a total failure if the guy at 6 turns out to be a stud.
Yeah.
It's like, would you rather have like one super elite guy or 2 really solid starters? I don't know. I think where the Eagles are, you can make the case for the latter. Where they are as a brand.
And that's why they did it. They're looking at this roster saying, "Oh, we don't have much. We gotta get some young talent in here by the truckload," and that's what they're positioned to do now.
Yeah, agreed. Interesting day.
Yeah, absolutely interesting day. We weren't expecting it. We weren't expecting to do this pod, but we appreciate you guys listening to it. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, please do us a favor. Rate, subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click subscribe there.
Can I say one thing? I went to Temple University Hospital today with my parents. We all got our second vaccine. I just want to give a shout out to everyone at Temple because they run the most efficient operation there. And I just feel so lucky. I just took my parents in 3 weeks ago, and they saw me with my parents and said, "We're gonna give you a shot while you're here." I didn't ask for it. They just kind of told me. But the nurses, the volunteers, the doctors, everybody was so professional, such an efficient operation. We were in and out of there in half an hour. So I just want to thank everybody there. It's really a miracle. I mean, that these vaccines are here a year after this whole thing started. And I just feel so blessed to have gotten my second one. And so they said, go home and rest. I ended up writing a story and doing a podcast. So maybe I'll go take a nap now.
Yeah, go take a nap. Hopefully you don't get any symptoms from the second shot. I heard that happens to some people, but hopefully we get a relaxing weekend. And we hope you all enjoy your weekends too. For Rube, I'm Dave. We'll talk to you on the next Eagle Eye podcast.